Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Wally Lamb is the author of The River is Waiting. Wally is the author of 6 New York Times bestselling novels: I'll Take You There, We Are Water, Wishin' and Hopin', The Hour I First Believed, I Know This Much Is True, and She's Come Undone. Wally also edited Couldn't Keep It to Myself and I'll Fly Away, 2 volumes of essays from students in his writing workshop at York Correctional Institution, a women's prison in Connecticut, where he was a volunteer facilitator for 20 years. Wally lives in Connecticut with his wife, Christine, and they have 3 sons. He has been on this podcast in the past, and I am delighted to welcome him back now. Welcome, Wally. Thank you so much for coming back on my show to talk about The River is Waiting. Congratulations.
Happy to be here, Zibby, and thank you very much. Yeah.
This book deals with such dark, heavy topics, and yet there is a hopeful message of resilience all the way through. Can you talk a little bit about where this idea came from and what it's really about?
Yeah, sure. Well, I never know when it's time for me to start a new book. I never know what it's going to be about. I'm not moving toward a certain character or a certain ending or anything like that. But what I do, and this was something that was taught to me by a longtime writing teacher, and she said, "You're never going to tell you're never going to tell an original story." She said, "So go back to the ancient myths because they're the stories that have lasted because people need them to be told and retold." So I have done that ever since. And so when I was sort of spinning my wheels and trying to figure out what exactly I was going to take on, I started reading about it's a myth about, it's called La Llorona, and she is the wailing woman in Mexican mythology, and she finds out her husband is unfaithful, and in response she drowns her children in anger, and then she is a ghost that haunts others by rivers and bodies of water. So I don't know. That's where I started, and I couldn't. I kept being interested in that, but it wasn't getting any traction. And then one day in the newspaper, I found a little article on one of the, not on page 1, but it was about these terrible accidents called backovers, where usually a parent, a loved one who has a little kid will not realize that the kid is not in the car, but back in the driveway or whatever, and will roll over them. And in 9 out of 10 instances, the child survives, but there is that one terrible example of a child who does not survive. So I was in horror when I read about that. And at the time, we had our first grandchild was 3 years old, and we had just welcomed an infant, his baby sister. And I have a car with a backup camera, and my son down in New Orleans, Jared, he and his wife did not at the time have a backup camera. And I was so scared. And I think fear probably motivates me more than anything. And so I called them up and I said, "Look, Jared, if you fly up here to Connecticut from Louisiana, I will give you my car with the backup camera, and I'll get another car. And, so fly up and then you can drive it back." And he did that. And I went out and got the exact same car. That car was only about 6 months old. And the dealership was like, "You want the same color? They couldn't quite get it. But yeah, that it started with those 2 things, really. The wailing woman, and of course, in the story that came about, almost 7 years later, there is a woman who cries for her children, for her child specifically, and there is water, that figures into it, and then there's that terrible accident that occurs.
Oh my gosh. I love that you didn't like just tell your son Jared, like, I'm gonna just buy you a car. You're like, you actually have to fly here and drive my
Right,
old car so that I can get
right,
myself a new car.
right. That's right. Maybe a little bit of selfishness there. I wasn't thinking of
No,
that.
not at all. You're like, you're teaching your kids to work for it. I love it,
Yeah, right, right, right.
I like it. Well, I didn't know it had a name, backovers. It's, as a parent, it's
Terrifying.
horrifying. Just the
Yeah.
thought of it. So that's great that you did that for him. But reading about it in the way that an accident and one moment and the ways that you get to some of the worst moments of your life and how you feel you can put yourself in those moments, like you're setting yourself up for some bad things to happen, right? It's not that you're not causing them. It's just it's like when you're walking in the street and nothing good happens on walking on the sidewalk at like 4 a.m. type of thing. Like he's setting himself up for not optimal conditions. So when this horrible thing happens and then the self-loathing after, and what happens with his wife Emily and Maisie, his daughter, I mean, it's hard not to read without like grasping your chest, like, oh my gosh. Was it hard to write all of that? Like, that must have felt, or do you like that feeling of like, oof?
No, there's a part of me maybe is superstitious that if I write about these terrible things happening to people, maybe they won't happen to me or my family. But that was only a little bit of part of it. No, it was difficult to write about because I become these characters. I always write in the first person. I think probably, oh, hey Pooch, oh, what a
Sorry,
cute
my
dog.
dog.
No, don't be sorry. No, but I hear actors talk about what they do, for a living, and I sort of nod in recognition because what I do is like I walk into the room where I write, which is where I am now, and I become somebody else for 5-6 hours, and then luckily I'm able to shed that skin and go back to my own much more peaceful life. But yeah, I feel when I'm writing as these characters, I feel what they're feeling.
Well, the horror of the event just keeps going with, I don't want to give things away. There's so much that happens and I don't want to like tell everybody, but it just like keeps getting worse. It's like when you feel like your main character can't take anything else, he has like even more horrible, painful things physically and emotionally happening. How do you come back from this? And that's why I started by saying that it is about resilience, because he gets through. It shows us like we can get through anything. Is that what you were kind of going for, even though it just evolved?
I wasn't going for anything in particular. I had no idea. And this is true of just about all the things that I've written, all the novels anyway. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know what was going to happen. But another thing that sort of served me while I was writing this novel is that I had a 20-year experience working with imprisoned women. I ran a writing program for them, started in 1999 and left the program in 2019. So, and this is a writing program, I was a volunteer, and the women, once they got to trust me and trust one another, they began to write about their lives, and in many cases their secrets. They began to divulge what had derailed their lives. Some of them, many of them, had been the victims of incest when they were kids. But anyway, some of the women were, they had, okay, middle class lives or working class lives. And then, like Corby in the novel, one day something happens and, they go off the rails. And so, whereas some of the women that I dealt with, had lives of crime that, from early on, others just did something one day and found themselves in prison, which is, which is not to say that Corby didn't, cause him to, to do this terrible thing and end up in prison. But that was instructive for me, that you could be living your life ethically. And then something happens, you snap or whatever, and then you spend a lot of years, having to repent.
Oh my gosh. You set it up with, struggling with substances, right? Corby is really self-medicating his way through twin fatherhood and as a parent of twins. Like, that is hard. I get it. It is hard to get through
Yeah.
some days, but there's a lot written, I feel like, about moms needing wine to get through the tough times, but there's a lot less about like how men cope with the overwhelm of parenting. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, he's before he becomes the custodian parent, he's lost his job. So he was a sort of a conventional 30-something guy working for an advertising firm, and then that firm there's a reduction in force, a reduction in people, and he's on the chopping block. And so now he has a wife who is a teacher, and she becomes the chief breadwinner, and he loves the kids, his twins, his 2-year-old twins, but he also, as a guy, feels somehow disconnected and something of a failure, because he's no longer the family breadwinner, and so he begins to he's anxious, and so he gets a prescription for a benzodiazepine, and he becomes addicted to that, and he also starts drinking, and he does this sneakily, and so that his wife doesn't see. She knows about the prescription, but she doesn't know that he's also drinking during the day, when in fact he's also parenting those kids. So that sort of leads to what happens with him. And I have had my own problems with alcohol, and I've been sober for about 14 years now, but I bring my own experience into some of his addictive behavior.
Is there a moment that you think of when you were struggling that's a moment that you wish so much you could take back?
Yeah, not a moment, but sort of a way that in my life I didn't seem like me for a while there, and this happened to me. I was a late bloomer in terms of alcoholism, and so I drank enthusiastically before that, but it was in my 50s when it became a real problem, and it was at a crossroads. We had just adopted a very troubled kid. We had two of our own children, and then we adopted a third who was mentally ill and had come from a terrible situation. So there was the challenge of that. He changed all the rules of parenting that we thought we knew about. We could love him. He was 4 when he came into our lives, and we thought, okay, we can keep him safe and we can love him, and he'll come out okay. But we were ignorant about the damage that can be caused in very early childhood. So there was that. At the same time, I was becoming a parent of my parents. My mother had a number of strokes, and she was kind of losing her mind. And my father had Parkinson's disease. And so they became very much in need of my support. So there were these things happening. And then the third element was that, I had this glorious thing happen twice with the Oprah Book Club, but it intimidated me to write the first sentence of something new, because I didn't want to disappoint these suddenly millions of readers that I had, and so I was afraid. I was afraid to write. So it was that perfect storm of those three things happening. And I began to escape by medicating myself with alcohol, not any kind of prescription medication, but it was it was easy to go to the package store and spend your night with your bottle.
And how did you know when did you know it was a problem, and when did you seek help?
I knew it was a problem this was for a 10-year period. I knew it was a problem about 5 years in, but then I was too afraid to go to any 12-step program, because suddenly I had this name recognition, and that was keeping me away. It was pride, really. And so it just got worse. It spiraled down, and thank God my wife, hung in there with me. And so eventually, I had to walk in and sort of declare myself to a bunch of strangers. And what the wonderful thing was that it opened me up to all kinds of people who I hadn't known before, and really, and I still go to meetings, and I've had so many good friendships come out of it, and so really, you think this terrible thing is going to lead to more terrible things, but in my case, it led to a very, very good dividend.
Wow. Well, good for you for getting to the other
Thank you.
side of that and being inspiring
Right.
to those who might be struggling. Do you still feel that fear of starting a book?
Oh yes, yeah. I have just started a new one, but the one that's coming out soon, The River is Waiting. I actually finished that at the end of last year, and so I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe that's my last novel, and then I was hanging around the house for about a week or so, and I go, yeah, I don't know what to do, so I'll try something else, and so I started this one, and I knew the other one had to come out first, so I wasn't so intimidated to start this, because I figured, well, nobody's going to have to look at this and for a long time.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Do you feel like you'll jinx it if you say what this one is about? Can you talk about it at all?
I'll tell you a little bit about it. The main character is a feisty young woman named Josephine, who's born in 1898, and she's born into a family. She's got two brothers. She idolizes one brother, and she can't stand her bratty little brother because he is he his their mother enters him in the charming child contest, in which actually was a thing. I think it was in the Daily News, and he wins second prize. And so the mother, her younger son, can do no wrong, and Josie is just really pissed off about this, and he's a little brat, he's a little manipulator, and then the story grows up. Yeah, I mean, she grows up a little bit in the story, and he does, and he becomes a sort of a conniver with women, and her other brother, her older brother, becomes a soldier in World War I. So I had to do a ton of research on that horrible war. And so I'm about maybe 125 pages into it. And again, I'm not sure quite where it's going.
I mean, if you want, I could throw out some lighter topics for you. You just go right to it's like you can't think of anything, researching a new war. It's like you're a glutton for punishment.
Well, I did write one funny book called Wishing and Hoping, and they actually made a movie, a Christmas movie out of it. And that was a delight to write. It was the fastest thing I ever wrote. And it was a lot of fun. And being, going to the movie set and everything, that was fun. That one stars Molly Ringwald and the late great Meatloaf, who I met on the set one time. And he said, oh yeah, you're the guy who wrote the book, right? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, I want to tell you something, Wally. I've had 3 concussions in my life. And he proceeds to tell me about the 3 concussions. I'm like, okay. I'm not sure where that came from, but I'm going to listen intently.
Oh my gosh. I was kidding, of course, about the, lighter topics.
Oh, sure. Well, I do have to, because I write about these bleak things, I do have to sort of save myself by putting in some comic relief. So usually there is a friend or somebody in the one of the minor characters sort of gives the readers a chance to sort of breathe a little bit. In this case, it is one of Corby's cellmates,
Yes.
a guy named Manny Della Vecchia, who is half Italian and half Jewish, and he's sort of a good guy in this prison where there are a lot of bad guys, and so he becomes Corby's friend.
Which is lovely. When you finish a day of intense writing and you walk back into the other room, How is that transition? Are you able to just shake it off, or does it linger? Do you feel it? Is it heavy like a coat you're wearing?
No, I can usually shake it off. Although my wife, Chris, sometimes she knows. I don't usually tell her, on a day-to-day basis what's happened in the story, but she can tell if something really hard happened because she says your behavior will sort of reflect that. I don't necessarily feel that, but that's her observation. Uh, and I play a lot of music. Music lots of times will pull me out and pull me out of the plot. And I also sometimes play music while I'm writing, usually on a low volume, but sometimes it sort of helps me if I'm trying to figure out what the story is or what the next plot element might be. Sometimes a song lyric that I kind of overhear while the music is going on will direct something. And that happened. It's why I like to tip my hat to songwriters, because I've always, every one of my novels either is from a song title or has an excerpt from a song lyric. And this latest one, The River is Waiting, actually came in the middle of writing the story, and it's an old John Fogerty song. He was the lead singer for Creedence Clearwater Revival, and there's a beautiful version of this same song by Irma Thomas, who's one of the mainstays of New Orleans music. So that's I like to sort of tip my hat to the musicians for helping me find the way. And The River is Waiting. So I decide, okay, that has to be the title. I'm not sure why, but what is the river waiting for? Then I have to ask myself that question and try to solve that riddle.
So interesting. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, what advice do you have for aspiring authors?
Well, I've worked with a lot of aspiring authors, high school kids for about 25 years. And then I worked as the head of creative writing at the University of Connecticut for a while. And then I worked with the prison writers and so forth. And I tell them the same message, that the real writing comes in revision. Don't ever feel that you can get it right in a first draft. It doesn't happen to me, and it doesn't happen to any of the professional writers that I know. And I've been in a writers group for, oh God, when I started writing, first of all at Vermont College, and then later, with a private writing group and we've been going together for years, decades. And so you humble yourself to the process. You listen to other people about how you might add something that's going to make it better, or cut something that's going to make it better, or clarify something that you think is clear, but other people don't. And sometimes reordering, putting things, like you might have a great paragraph that's buried in the middle of an essay or a story. So try it at the beginning. See if you like it. In other words, I really like to revise. I think a first draft is grunt work. I mean, that becomes really hard to me, and then after that, there's more play involved.
I love that. Wally, thank you so much. The River is Waiting. So beautiful, so emotional. This is what good books do, right? They make you feel like you're going through it yourself. And it was really beautiful.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. And the way I know it is because I thought about 10 minutes had gone by, and instead, it's time to close. So that's a tribute to you. You're a great interviewer. Thank you, Zibby. And thank you for all you do for books and for readers and writers as well.
Thank you. It's very sweet. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram @ZibbyOwens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.